Hi, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, wherever you are located. Thanks for being here. I'm excited to walk you through today's presentation. So let's dive right in. I'm Brent, a Sage Intacct sales consultant with Vision 33, and I'm based in Vancouver. So my role at the company is to help finance teams learn how to get the most out of Sage Intacct, things like streamlining processes, improving reporting, or just setting them up for smarter and faster decisions. So joining me today is Matthew, my colleague who will be walking you through a live demo shortly to show some of this in action. Just a quick rundown of today's session. So I'll start with a brief 5-minute intro, then Matthew will take over for about 40 minutes for the demo, and then we'll wrap up with some of your questions. Before we move to the demo, just a little information about Vision 33. Now, selecting the right software is important, but the right partner is the real difference maker for your business. A few things that Vision 33 brings to the table is extensive support and industry experience. We have longtime customers who rely on our partnership to support their business, and we're also a leader in the Sage community. And when it comes to your implementation, that's just the beginning of the Vision 33 journey, because we're here for a long-term supportive and a lot of customer care to deliver as well. And ultimately, it's our consistency, reliability, and a focus on excellence as well to provide the customers the information they need, knowledge that we can provide them, and with the end goal to help them transform accounting frustrations into success and strategic growth. Now, like Sage, Vision 33 is also a global company, but we like to say we operate as a small business, with our main operations located in the US, Canada, and the UK, and we have certified consultants such as Matthew to serve you locally. So here's a few of our wonderful current Sage Intacct customers who are currently running Sage, and they all come from all over the spectrum, including nonprofit, SaaS and technology, professional services, and many more. I'm sure most of you have done your initial research on Sage Intacct, but here are a few highlights. As you can see, Sage Intacct supports several industries and offers industry-specific functionality. Vision 33's biggest customer footprint is nonprofit, where we have approximately 35% of our client base. And building expertise in these verticals really helps us guide our customers down the right path with their implementation. And mostly, as well, including your sector's best practices for reporting. Here's a quick snapshot of Sage's global reach. And here's another snapshot that shows Sage Intacct's global reach. And if you're interested in the underlying numbers, Sage Intacct is as secure as it gets. So you no longer need to worry about backups, downtime, and costly upgrades because it just works all the time. Sage Intacct isn't a solution that was retrofitted for the cloud. It's a native cloud solution from its first line of code. It's an affordable, easy-to-use solution for finance teams that need only specialized finance tools. It's also a modular solution, meaning you only pay for what you need now in terms of functionality. And then you can add on more functionality later on if and when you happen to need it. We call Sage Intacct a best-of-breed solution, and its open API makes it easy to seamlessly integrate with other best-of-breed solutions that you may or may not be using today as well. Now, for integrations, Sage has what's called the Sage Intacct Marketplace, which you may have not heard of. It's a website with a list filled with pre-built integrations to other best-of-breed solutions for things like CRM, e-commerce, and so much more. But if you have a solution that you want to integrate and it isn't on the Sage Marketplace, Vision 33 can help build that integration for you with what's called Saltbox, which is our exclusive cloud-based integration solution built by our automation and integration experts. And just a final word about Sage Intacct's embedded AI. Now, while it's not built into our demo environment just yet, we want to introduce to you Sage Copilot. Basically, Sage Copilot is like getting a very smart productivity assistant. It gives you the answers you need, and you can also trust, and the tools given for a smoother, faster month-end close. So be sure to ask Vision 33 and whoever you're talking to here about Sage Copilot if you have any more questions when we follow up. So that's it from me. And now I'll turn it over to Matthew for the demo. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy.
Hi, everyone. As Brent mentioned, my name is Matthew. I'm going to walk you through our demo today. A little bit of background about myself. I've been with Vision 33 for about 4.5 years. Before I joined Vision 33 and implementing Intacct, I did work as a financial accountant, junior role, an intermediate role, and a senior role. I have been a CPA since 2015. So if you have any questions today, please don't feel like they need to be software based. Feel free to get into the weeds of the accounting that you're asking about and so on. I'm definitely much more of an accounting guy than a software guy. So before we look at actual functionality, let's talk about some immediate benefits of moving to Sage Intacct. So Intacct is a native cloud environment, which means it was built in the cloud, born in the cloud. It was not taken from what used to be an on-prem solution and then kind of migrated into the cloud for a type of hybrid solution. It is all cloud-based. So you won't need any program installed on any specific computer. It is all browser based. So as long as you have a device that can access the internet, an internet connection, and you know your credentials, you can log in and do everything you see me do here today from anywhere on any device. So at home on your personal laptop, in a Starbucks on your personal laptop, at the airport waiting for a flight on a tablet, whatever it may be. Everything's fully secure. You don't need a VPN or any added security. All of that is handled through our secure data centers and our partners with AWS and Microsoft. The next big benefit of a native cloud environment would be the updates to the solution. So I know with a lot of on-prem solutions, when an update is released for that solution, you have to install it yourself. Some clients actually bring in a consultant to install the update because they can be quite heavy. With Intacct, that goes away. Intacct actually updates automatically 4 times per year. It doesn't take any action from you whatsoever. You don't even need to push a button to confirm the update. It is just you log out one day, and when you log in the day of the update is in your system. They will happen outside of your normal business hours. They won't make the solution unavailable. They will not slow the solution down, will not break any third-party integrations that you may have. So it's a very seamless update process. If it wasn't for the home screen little note here that says 2025 release 2 is here that I'm highlighting right now, unless you went in and looked at some configuration screens and looked for new settings, you might not even notice it occurred. It is that seamless. If you are interested in what has changed with this most recent release, you can click on read the release notes. That will bring you into a full table of contents. There's a nice highlight video that I like. I like to watch the highlight video, make some notes about the updates that could help me with my ongoing projects or help past clients that are still running Intacct. I'll always go back and think about those clients and let them know of any updates that may have occurred that I have for functionalities I know they were looking for in the past. So I like this video, I make some notes, and then I'll come over and I'll drill into the specific modules. So as you can see, with this update, we've seen changes in AP, AR, cash management, consolidations, construction contracts, employee expenses, fixed assets, inventory, and so on. So pretty substantial updates. So this means you're always on the most up-to-date version of the solution, always using a state-of-the-art solution. If you're interested when the releases will occur, you can click on the release calendar. That will give you the release dates for the updates throughout the year. These dates are in stone. Release 1 happened on the 7th of February, Release 2 happened on the 9th of May, Release 3 will happen on the 8th of August, and Release 4 will happen on the 7th of November. And after Release 4, maybe a week later, maybe even sooner, the release calendar for the next calendar year will actually be released. So after November 7, you will actually know when the updates will occur in the next calendar year for 2026. And outside of that, probably one of the biggest immediate cost savers is If you move to a native cloud solution, that means no on-prem servers, no server maintenance, no server security. So those are immediate cost savings right out of the gate. And with all that out of the way, let's jump into actual functionality. So Intacct does a lot of things really well, from your core accounting modules, accounts payable, accounts receivable, cash management, your standard modules that come with every solution. It then is a modular type system. So if you need added functionality, such as if you need fixed asset management, you can build on the fixed asset management module. We can turn this on at any point in time. You don't need it to be turned on day one. It could be 2 years down the road, and you could say all of a sudden we now have the need for fixed asset management, and we can just turn that module on for you. Same thing with things like inventory control, contract management, revenue recognition, and so on. So it does a lot of good things really, really well. But where it separates itself, in my opinion, would be with the financial reporting and custom reporting capabilities that come with Sage Intacct. Not just the reports that it can build, but how easy it is to build those reports and really isolate data that you're looking to isolate, kind of hone in on particular pieces of your financial data to get that insight that you're looking for decision making and growth in the future. The backbone of what makes that so easy in Intacct comes from what we call dimensions in Intacct. Now, the way I like to describe dimensions is I do it in a few ways to kind of try to tie it all together. First of all, think of your dimensions as different levels of reporting. So if you need to be able to report by department or by a class, now class can be anything, department can be anything. We can rename these dimensions. So we could change class to be like revenue streams or programs or whatever you needed to read. So different levels, different layers of reporting. The next way I kind of put this together is if you think of what would previously have been a segmented chart of accounts, where if you were trying to report based off of, say, your departments, like we're going to see on my screen here, and you had, I don't know, 30 GL accounts, which is probably still a low number, 30 GL accounts that you wanted to be able to track the financial activity across 5 different departments, you would actually end up with 150 GL accounts, right? GL account 4000-100, then 4000-200, 4000-300, dash 400, dash 500, and then you move on to GL account 4010-100, 200, 300. So whatever those sub accounts used to be, they'll actually come off of your core chart of accounts. So your chart of accounts will actually remain at its core GL account number. So you won't have any sub accounts in Intacct. We can if the need arises, but it is very, very rare to need to do that. And that does a couple of things. It keeps your chart of accounts slim as can be. And that in turn is going to help with your employees when they're coding transactions in the system. The larger that your chart of accounts is, the more keystroke errors you're going to see. It's just natural. The more options there are, the more mistakes that'll occur. And the last way that I like to really hammer home this idea is if you ever find yourself, and I say this because I don't want people to get caught up with the terminology of department or class or location. As I said, we can make these read however you need them to read within your organization. If you ever find yourself saying a sentence, I need to be able to find my gross margin by X. I need to be able to look at my revenue by Y. I need to be able to look at my expenses by Z. Whatever that variable gets replaced by, department, program, revenue stream, division, product line, whatever it may be, that is what your dimensions will become. And the way the dimensions work in Intacct is as you're coding any type of transaction, whether it's an accounts payable bill, a general ledger journal entry, an accounts receivable invoice, literally any transaction that hits your ledger, you tag a combination of a GL account plus a dimension. So the example that I like to use is you get the bill for your rent and you allocate your rent out based off square footage that each department in your building takes up. So on line one, maybe we put $5,600 and that goes to the sales department because they have the vast amount of the square footage. And when we get down to the services department, they take up very little space, so they just $1,000. And we get down and we have the admin department, they take up even less space, so that's $500. We get down to our marketing department, say even smaller again, we'll go 450. And then we will grab our last department of the IT, and we'll say they're somewhere in the middle here. They take up 750 for our $8,300 worth of rent. So we've now allocated our rent out across our departments appropriately. And it's not just one dimension that you can tag at the line level. You can also tag a project at each line level if you wanted to. You could tag a different class at every line level. You could tag a different location, a different program, whatever it needs to be, whatever way you need to be able to isolate data in that GL account, you can tag as many dimensions as you like. And that gives us a lot of flexibility. First and foremost, if I wanted to go run a P&L, a general ledger detail report, and I didn't care about this departmental breakdown, I just cared about the total in my rent GL account, I could run a P&L or a GL detail and just get to this straight 8,300. In the same breath, if I wanted to get to see the total of 8,300, but see the allocation out across all of my departments, then I would be able to do that as well. And then if I wanted to isolate one department or multiple departments when I run said report, I would be able to do that as well. So it literally gives you all of the different options that you could want. So let me highlight that. What I'll do is I'll actually go ahead and post this journal entry just so you can see. I'm going to put bill number 45,000, or this AP bill, apologies. I think I have enough tagged here. I know in demo environments, sometimes they're looking for multiple dimensions. Yeah, it's looking for a second dimension. Okay, that's just because I tagged a project here and it marked my line as billable. So we're going to take this away and we're going to take this billable flag away. So remember our total rent was 8,300 and I posted that with a posting date of today. So let's just say I want to go run a GL detail report. So I can go run a GL detail report and I'll say I'm going to run it for the current month. I'm going to run it just on my rent GL account. So I'm going to find my rent GL account here and I am just going to go ahead and run that out. And now we will see. Well, that's funny. Oh, I coded it to utilities and not rent. That would certainly do it. I thought I was coding everything to rent there a moment ago, but I guess I tagged it to utilities. I was more focused on the dimensions than my GL account. Apologies. So if I come in again, so as soon as that ran, I said, that can't be. I know I just posted it. So I'll go ahead and run this, and we see the straight 8,300, right? We see all the different details. That is most likely because I ran my GL detail report in the detailed version. I could run it in a summary version, and I should just get one line of 8,300. Now it still wants to spit it out multiple, but even still, I'm seeing the full 8,300. And from here, I can't really tell what department each amount was coded out to. Now, if I do want to see that when I'm running my GL detail report, I can simply choose in my dimensional values, show me my department name as part of my GL detail report. And then when I run this, I'm still getting the full 8,300, but I can see that 450 went to the marketing department, 500 went to the admin department, 750 went to the IT department, services and sales. And then the other option that I said is you can isolate, right? So if we wanted to see just things for the services department, I could go ahead here and when I'm running this report, say, you know what, show me only things that were tagged to my services department. And when I run my GL detail report again, it just isolates that little bit of data for me. Now, of course, you would likely be running this across multiple GL accounts to isolate activity in a specific dimension, but I think this is a good example to get the idea across. Now, that's great on a GL detail report, right? But when it comes down to it, you're really looking for this reporting wise, like on a financial report. And that's no different than what we just seen. So if I come in and run just my standard profit and loss, I'm just going to do a little filter here to isolate my data. So when I run a P&L summary here, and I'm going to run this for a different time frame, but the same applies. What we're going to get first of all is just a pretty standard P&L. We have our current month, we have the prior month, I chose to put the prior month and the variance here. Obviously, you can choose what shows here. Maybe you don't want prior month, maybe you want the same month of last year, or maybe you just want prior year to date. Of course, we can do all of that. So we'll see here that we just have a P&L. Nothing's broken out by dimension. And I'm going to highlight here my full year P&L being the 2.445 million. So maybe after looking at this, you say, okay, but now I want to see my departmental breakdown. Well, you'll have a separate report ready to go, and it'll just be right here. And when you run this report this time, it's configured to break it out across your departments for you. So when we run this now, all of a sudden, we have an individual P&L for all of our different departments. We have a total to the far right, so you're actually still getting all the value from running the prior report, and you can see it reconciles to the 2.445 million. And then, like I showed prior, if you want to filter for a particular department, so if I choose, say, the sales department here, we see they have a net loss of 118,000. If when I'm running this report, I just want to see a specific department, I can filter for my specific department, my sales department. And then when I run this, we go ahead and we just get an isolated P&L. So the dimensions will really give you a lot of flexibility in how you view your data and how you can hone in on particular parts of your data. Now, of course, all the financial reports in Intacct are fully drillable. So if I click on a dollar value, that is going to bring me into a GL detail report for the dollar value that I selected. From my GL detail report, if I wanted to drill back further, I could go ahead and do so. Right here, this is an accounts receivable invoice. So if I click on the dollar amount, that will bring me back to my source transaction. Looks like it's bringing me back to the journal entry in this type because it's batched. So if I click on my batch, that'll bring me into the batch of the invoices, and then I can drill into a particular invoice if I want to do so. So fantastic financial reporting capabilities. And that really is just scratching the surface of what we can do. It's just a very quick example. Now, building off of the financial reporting in Intacct comes the dashboard capabilities. So essentially anything that you can put on a financial report or any data you have in your system, we can pull that onto a dashboard for you. And that can either be a financial dashboard or an informational dashboard or a process dashboard. There's really no limitations here. You can see in my system, I have a vast amount of dashboards. You can have as many dashboards in the system as you like. There is no limit. You can build them yourself. Some of these are canned, they come out of the box, and then you can modify them. And the dashboards can be any mix of user-based, role-based, group-based. On an individual dashboard basis, you can decide who can and cannot see each individual dashboard. So you get a lot of security of your data as well. You can really pick and choose who can see every dashboard. So this is just an example of a dashboard that was built for the CFO. Again, we can filter this by our dimensions, just like we can financial reports if we want to. We can refilter it by date. On this particular dashboard, we have a line graph here that they've named company performance, but this is a P&L. The top line here is our revenue, as you can see in my key. The bottom line is our expenses, and the middle line in orange is our net income. We then have some performance indicators. So we have our revenue compared against our budget. We're above budget, so that's a happy face. They can just be up and down green arrows or thumbs up and thumbs down, just showing a little flexibility here. We have our total revenue, and instead of being compared against the budget, this is being compared against prior month. Now, this doesn't have to be compared against budget or prior month. It can be versus last quarter. It can be versus the same month in the prior fiscal year. You pick and choose what you compare against here. So we've got direct labor costs. You can see that this is an expense, not a revenue. So we're up. Our expenses are up compared to the prior month. So this time our up arrow is red instead of green because it's not necessarily a bad thing, but you get the idea. We have our operating expenses versus budget and so on. We've got a horizontally stacked bar graph, a vertically stacked bar graph, a pie graph, more performance indicators. You'll notice that on a couple of these performance indicators, we're showing the variance against budget or 3 months prior in dollar value instead of percentage. So again, it's up to you which you do. Just again, showing some flexibility and some more graphs and more performance indicators and more graphs again. Now, that's not where this ends for these dashboards. They're fantastic for another couple of reasons. First of all, they're a little interactive. If you want to isolate your revenue line, you can click your key down below that isolates your revenue line. can add them back or take them away on a whim. Really simple to do. It stands true for really any graph we have here on a dashboard. You see how I can just pick and choose what's showing. So pretty cool there. It's nice to see this trend, but if you're interested in the actual dollar values, you can click on show data and get the actual dollar values with ease. So that's a very nice feature. And that stands true for any of our graphs that we see here. So I can click on any of these and show my data and get the financial data, the dollar value. But my favorite part about them, and this is probably every accountant's favorite part about these, is since these graphs are derived from financial reports, they're going to maintain their drill down functionality. So if I hover over a revenue dot, I can see that it's 1.16 million. But if I want to see the details, I can click on that dot. That will pop open the revenue portion of my P&L, and then I can continue to drill back from here. The drill down functionality is fantastic here. So again, you can just keep drilling backwards. If I hover over an expense line and click it, brings me to the expense portion of my P&L. And I think everybody can put one and one together and come to the conclusion that if I click on a net income dot, it is going to open up my entire P&L and give me all the detail that I'm looking for. So really, really good dashboard functionality here. I'll bring up a couple of more dashboards. I won't spend so long talking about them, but just to show a little flexibility. So let's take our controller dashboard instead of our CFO dashboard. So this is just structured a little bit differently. It has performance indicators at the top of the dashboard, and they're different performance indicators. We're going to have a P&L versus budget load in here now in a moment. We've got a cash balance trend here. We've got a close through summary here. We've got a working checklist. So if you just want to put a checklist on your dashboard, we've got some approval lists showing here. We've got an expense summary by department with some conditional formatting. So as the numbers get a little bit higher, they get colored a little darker, so they pop out to you, and so on. So it's just one more dashboard. And then one more dashboard that I like to show is the month-end close, because it just does a good job of showing the flexibility. Because we looked at some financial dashboards here. Well, what if you want a process-driven dashboard? So this is for month-end. We have a checklist of month-end activities. And on this checklist, which also exists somewhere else in the system, like Nikki, Ryan, and Emma, they would be able to come into this checklist and update the statuses of their activities. So we wouldn't have to actually go follow up with Nikki and Ryan if we got them in the habit of updating this checklist. We could view this dashboard and immediately know where we stand on our month-end processes. We then have a close through summary again. We actually seen this on the last dashboard. We have some custom navigation into some month-end activities. So like to close our subledger, instead of having to go navigate from our main drop-down list, you see this brought me to the close subledger option. That's just a quick link instead of having to come to AP and close my subledger. Brings you to the same screen just a little bit quicker. So really nice there. So the dashboards can be used for many different things. They're certainly relished across the majority of our clients. I've seen some clients do some fantastic things with these dashboards and really put them to really strong use. So great functionality there to go with the financial reporting, just a little bit of a cherry on top, if you will. Moving away from financial reporting and dashboards, one module we like to talk about is the multi-entity capabilities, the global consolidation capabilities, multi-currency capabilities. So the environment that I'm working in right now, it's actually a group of companies, 7 different operating companies. I know they're labeled as countries, but they are meant to operate individual operating businesses that file their own financial statements in their own financial currency. So USA, they're operating in USD, Canada's operating in Canadian, UK in GBP, Australia in the Australian dollar, and South Africa in the South African rand. I know in a lot of other systems, if you have this type of structure and you're doing work in one company and you need to do work in another company, it involves you logging out and logging back in. Well, in Intacct, that goes away. So if I'm working in USA Company 1, but I want to see this dashboard for USA Company 2 or the Canada company, I just hit my drop down and I click USA Company 2, and that pops open that company in a separate tab for me. So that'll actually open up USA Company 2. It should bring me right to the dashboard that I was on. Sometimes it gets a little bit finicky and brings you to a different screen, but in this case, it did bring me right to the dashboard that I was on. I say, oh, well, now I want to see it for the Canadian company. I choose the Canadian company. So here I actually have my USA Company 1 open in one tab. I have company two open in a second tab, and now I have my Canadian company open in a third tab. And I can work across my entities seamlessly without having to log in and log out. So that's really nice. You can have as many users in here working as you need. There's no limit to the amount of users that can be in here. And one question we always get from this type of structure is, what if I have employees that should be able to work in the US companies, but they shouldn't be able to see anything else? That's super easy in here. On every user's profile, we can pick and choose which companies they can see from this drop-down list, and that inherently will limit the financial data that they can see and which companies they can work in. So it's super simple to control. Building on top of that is the interentity transactions. So if you have this type of structure, chances are you're dealing with some intercompany transactions, whether it's billing back management fees, whether it's, if the USA company, one of the USA companies gets a bill in Canadian dollars and they don't have a Canadian bank account, it gets paid out of a bank account owned by the Canadian company. Maybe we transfer money out of one bank account owned by the Canada company into a bank account owned by the USA company. All of those examples, part of the journal entry should be a due to, due from on each side of the business. And in Intacct, that happens for you automatically. So we'll take the most basic example of that, which is a funds transfer. So if we look at my funds transfer screen, you'll see here that I've transferred money out of bank account 100 into bank account 200. So bank account 100, and I'll wait for my screen to load before I keep going. Bank account 100 is owned by company 100. Bank account 200 is owned by company 200. So all I did was fill out this screen, and when the system creates the transaction, it actually posts the due to and due from for me as automatically as part of that entry. So with this set up correctly and used correctly, your intercompany accounts, your due tos and your due from accounts, they could become control accounts where we should never see a manual journal entry into those accounts. And if you've ever dealt with intercompany reconciliations and intercompany transactions, you know how important this is and how much fun it can be if your intercompany accounts come out of balance. Sometimes it is very, very difficult to find. I've done my fair share of reconciliations in my life, and I can say without a doubt that the intercompany reconciliations were the most difficult by far. So just really nice to see the intercompany transactions happen automatically. And lastly, when it comes to this type of setup, if you have this type of setup and you need to run consolidated financial statements, so you have all these different 7 operating entities, but at the end of the day, you report on a consolidated basis. At any point in time, we can create a set of consolidation books that will consolidate any number of those entities that you like into whatever currency you need. So here's just an example of our structure. Again, you can see that the Australian companies in Australian dollars, Canada and Canadian dollars, and so on, like I mentioned a moment ago. But if we need a consolidated financial statement to consolidate 2 of these companies, 3 of them, 4 of them, 5 of them, 6 of them, all of them into any currency, we can do that very, very easily. So we can come to our books setup. And you'll actually see here that we have 3 sets of books in my system. I'm going to use the global books as my example. The global books have been set up to consolidate into US dollars. If we jump to the entities to consolidate tab, we can see that it is consolidating the financials for all of our entities into one. You notice we have inter-entity auto elimination on, because on consolidated financial statements, we shouldn't need to show due tos and due froms. They should eliminate out, they should balance. If they don't balance, the system will post any difference into an elimination adjustment account. So just a P&L account on your consolidated books. And if you have any other GL accounts that should eliminate upon consolidation, such as intercompany receivables or intercompany payables, management fees, intercompany revenue, intercompany expenses, you can manually add those GL accounts down below as well, so they eliminate on consolidation. When you go to run a consolidation, it's a very easy thing to do. You get a drop-down list for all the different sets of consolidated books you've configured. You choose the time frame that you want to consolidate. I like the consolidate with options option because it shows me the exchange rates that are going to be used to convert me from Australian dollars to US dollars, Canadian dollars to US dollars, South African rand to US dollars. It shows me the exchange rates that are being used. These exchange rates are pulled from OANDA. They're pulled in automatically. You do not need to import any exchange rates. You can override these if you use a different rate for your consolidations. It's absolutely fine, but they will pull in automatically. And the exchange rates from OANDA are fairly generally accepted by most auditors. We have had some clients that just need to use a different rate, but it's very simple for them to just put the rates in when they run their consolidations. Once you run consolidations, your consolidated statements will be ready to go pretty much in real time. So if I jump out and take a look at my consolidations dashboard, this dashboard's not going to be nearly as flashy as what we've seen before. I still like it because, again, I'm an accountant at heart, showing some nice financial statements. Consolidated financial statements are not the easiest to develop. They most times require exporting data to Excel, running some lookups and formulas and all that good stuff. So it's just nice to see they can be system generated. It does list out each company individually from left to right if you want. We don't have to. We could just have one column, but most people will break it out like this because you just get more value from the report. If we scroll down, we have a consolidated P&L for that set of books, again in US dollars. And if I scroll down further, you're going to see a consolidated P&L for our non-US books. This one's in GBP. This one's in USD because it's for North American books, and then a consolidated balance sheet for our other two sets of books as well. So here you see three full sets of consolidated financial statements ready with ease. No exporting to Excel, no manually mapping GL accounts to groups, no overriding exchange rates. We just keep that process automated and you get your consolidated financials. So a really great feature here if that's the structure you're working in. Now, you do not have to have global consolidations if you have multiple entities like this. I have many clients that have multiple entities, but they don't do global consolidations. That is perfectly fine. As for the multi-currency, USA operates in US dollars. So if I'm putting in, again, any transaction such as an AP bill, and I get an accounts payable transaction from, let's pick, I know Advisor Printing, maybe? Yeah, Advisor Printing is in Ontario. So the transaction currency, they bill us in Canadian dollars. And you can see it's automatically selected here based off the vendor setup. The exchange rate date is today, and there's already an exchange rate here. Again, this is sourced from Oanda, and I don't have to import any of this. It is fully historical, and that's good because we all know that, if I'm putting in an AP transaction today, it's most likely not dated for today, right? It's probably dated for July 3rd or something like that. And if we scroll down, we'll see my exchange rate date is updated to July 3rd, and my exchange rate has changed to be what the rate was on July 3rd. Now, again, this is fully historical. I could change my exchange rate date here back to 2005. The system knows what the exchange rate was at that point in time. It grabs it in a flash. And as I put in my transaction amount in Canadian dollars, say 5,000, that converts it to the base amount in US dollars of 4,026 based off the exchange rate here. So if I come back up and I change this back to 2025, 4,026, but now my exchange rate has changed, so now it's 3,669. And just to show this, you can override this. If I change this to something crazy like 3, you'll notice that my 5,000 changes to 15,000. So it just respects whatever we put in here. You can bring in custom exchange rates if you want to, but again, generally there is no need to do so. And then on top of that, when we go to pay this transaction, when we make payment for this bill, the system will look at what the exchange rate was when we entered the transaction. It will look at what the exchange rate is when we're paying the transaction, and it will in turn record our realized exchange rate gain or loss on this individual transaction automatically for us. So a little more automation there for you. So really good functionality. Moving away from global consolidations, the next module we are going to talk about is going to be our purchasing module. Now, the purchasing module, as soon as I stop being blind, is essentially a more powerful accounts payable module. Okay. So if you don't need a lot of the things that I talk about in the purchasing module, just keep in mind that you can just use the core AP module. It's a very, very good AP module. It lets you do some stuff that other AP modules don't. One example is if a transaction is posted and we realize that there's an error, I don't have to do a journal entry or a credit note. If it's just posted, I can edit anything on this. It's fine. It's only posted as long as my period is open. I can change the GL account. I can change the amount. I can do whatever I need to do. And even if the transaction is paid, for example, this one here, even if a transaction is paid and we realize that we've made a coding error on this transaction, I can still change certain things in here after it's paid. I can't change anything that affects the vendor. I can't change the amount. I can't change the bill number. I can't change the due date or anything like that. But if I click the reclassify button, I can change anything that only affects my organization. It doesn't matter to the vendor what GL account I've coded this to. So if this is coded to the wrong GL account and it's paid, I can still come in and recode this. I don't need a journal entry. I can change the dimension breakout if I need to. Again, this doesn't affect the vendor, so we shouldn't be limited on whether or not we can change it. So that's a really, really nice feature. I know most systems, if something is paid, there's no editing it ever. So you end up with journal entries or credit notes and all that good stuff. So just an example of what the core AP module can do if you don't need the purchasing module. Now, the purchasing module, the reason we show this is because it comes with all that same functionality of the AP module, but it just gives you a little more functionality. It lets you create your procurement workflow from start to finish. So if you want to create a workflow where you have purchase requisitions and then move into purchase orders, and then you want to receive inventory, if you're not an inventory company, this step would just be grayed out. We wouldn't have a receipt of shipment into a vendor invoice. If you do implement a workflow or multiple workflows, because we can build your workflows from start to finish and you can have multiple different workflows. You are going to get a nice 3-way match, 4-way match. It's going to show all of your documents linked together. Like if we have a PO, it will show us which purchase requisition the PO is related to. If we get to the vendor invoice stage, it will show us which receipt, which purchase order, which purchase rec it's related to. We can put an approval policy on any stage of the workflow. And it's not like if we turn on an approval policy, it applies to all documents in our workflow. We can actually pick and choose which documents in our workflow have an approval policy on them, and the approval policy can vary across the documents. So I can have one type of approval policy on my purchase requisitions. I could have no approval policy or a different approval policy on my quotes. And then the same thing with purchase orders and so on. Let's take a look at some of that and mostly the approvals. Is the biggest question we get from this is how can we route the approvals? So there are many ways we can route the approvals. We can route them directly to specified people. We can say they go to Eileen, they go to Frank, they go to Tom, whatever you like. You just pick a person. They can be value based. So if you come in here and you put in a transaction that ends up being $50,000 and in your thresholds, you've decided that $50,000 is level two. Level one, say, is 0 to 40,000. Level two is 40,000 to 80,000. So this will go to a level two approver. Now with those value approvals, we can do direct or we can do progressive approvals. So direct, if it's level two, it would skip level one and go right to a level two person. If it's progressive, then it would first go to a level one person. It would then go to a level two person. But the most popular approvals that we tend to see are dimensional based approvals. What I mean by that is under my departments and under my projects, under my locations, which are actually hidden right now, but I can bring them up top if I wanted to, and under my employees, we can have managers assigned to each individual option that we have in those lists. So if I pick my sales department here and I just view my sales department, we can see that the manager is Mark, right? So if we turn on department managerial approvals, if I were to put in this purchase requisition, when I submit this, the system would look and say, okay, we've tagged department 100 at that line level. The manager of that department is Mark, so we're going to route this to Mark for approval. And on top of all of that, the approvals are not just one step. So you can set up an approval policy on your document that says, first we're going to go to the project manager, and then we're going to go through a value approval, then we're going to go to the department manager, and then they're all going to go to Tom for approval. It can be multi-step approvals. And with these approvals, you are going to get a really nice, strong audit trail of prior approvals or ongoing approvals. So if we come take a look at our purchase requisitions, we're going to see a couple of states over here. So we see a state of submitted, fairly self-explanatory. That is submitted for approval. If I click on the word submitted, it's going to open up a document history screen for me. I have this approval history button because there is an approval policy on this document. I can click on the approval history and I can see who this is being sent to for approval. So this one first goes to the transaction department manager, which in this case is Mark. After that, they're going to Tom for approval. And after Tom approves it, they're going to go to Vincent for approval. So that is the approval workflow there. If we see a state of converted, what that would mean is this transaction's been entered into the system. It has been approved if it had to go through any approval policy, and it has moved on in our workflow. So if we click on the word converted, we will get some really good information. First of all, we can see how far along our workflow this purchase requisition has gone. So our purchase requisition was entered on April 4th. That same day, that purchase requisition got converted into a purchase order. And again, on that same day, our purchase order got moved to a vendor invoice. So we've gone through the entire workflow with this document. This purchase requisition has been fully fulfilled. If we want to see the PO, we can click on the PO. It will pop open the PO for us on our screen. If we want to see the vendor invoice, we can click on the vendor invoice, and that will pop open the vendor invoice portion, the vendor invoice screen. We can see here that this did go through an approval before it can be converted. So we want to check that this was followed appropriately. We can still click on the approval history and we can see that this was supposed to go to Mark because he was the department manager. It was then going to go to Ryan, who was the project manager. It was then meant to go to Tom. Now, if we move over a little bit, we can see that Mark, Ryan, or Tom never actually approved this transaction. I actually overrode the approvals. You can see my name on these approvals. And over to the right, I have put in why that happened. So Mark, Ryan, and Tom are all out of office. This was an emergency repairs request. We had to get this pushed through. We couldn't wait for them to come back or approve this. So we overrode the approvals as an admin and we pushed this through. So some really, really strong audit trails. And outside of this being able to override the approvals as an admin, if say Mark, Ryan, and Tom were going on vacation and they knew ahead of time, they could turn on their delegations so that we wouldn't need to go in and change a setting to override the approval. They would just delegate out to the proper people based off the delegate settings that we'd set up. So some really great stuff there. So a really strong purchasing / AP module. The next module I'll talk about very briefly because we're low on time is going to be the order entry module. So just like the purchasing module is a more powerful AP module, the order entry module is just a more powerful accounts receivable module. So again, if you don't need a sales workflow and all this, you would just use the core AR module. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because the purchasing module and the order entry module, they are more or less twins. The only difference is in purchasing, you're coding to a vendor and generally expenses, and on order entry, you're coding to customers and generally revenue, right? Otherwise, the modules are more or less identical, less approval policies. There are no approval policies on the sales side within Sage Intacct, just so everybody can take that away. So it's all the same stuff, all the same functionality. What people like most about the AR module and order entry module in Intacct is the ability to send your invoices or your sales orders or your quotes or your customer statements or late payment notices. Intacct calls them dunning notices. I'd never heard this term before until Sage released this functionality, but this is a late payment notice. And we can send these out in bulk with ease. So if we wanted to send out our sales invoices, we could come in and click on print or email documents. We would set up some filters to tell the system what we're looking for. I'm going to use the full year of 2019 because I know there are invoices in this environment in that time frame. I'm going to click on previously sent here because I have hypothetically sent these invoices probably 150 times by now. I've done this demo so often. And I'm going to scroll down and just show you that right now I'm choosing to only send out my sales invoices, but if I wanted to send out my sales orders, my credit memos. I can send them all out at once. I'll leave them there. I don't know if there are any sales orders or credit memos in this time frame, but we'll leave it there. And then we'll just go ahead and we'll click on view. And that will go out and look for any documents that match my search parameters that I just set. It will pull them onto a screen. So you can see we have all sales invoices except for one. We have one credit memo down here that we're going to send out. And from here, we could email these directly out of the system. Now, you're not seeing email addresses populated in these boxes here. That is just because we're in a demo environment and there aren't email addresses attached to our customers. Well, if I drill into my customer here, you will see that there's no email address attached to that record. You would, of course, have email addresses attached to your customer records. And if you did, they would, of course, automatically pull into the screen right here, and the checkbox would automatically be selected, and you would just click print or email, and they would send out in bulk. So you would just send them out. We can do the same thing with statements or late payment notices. With this automatic send, there is a very nice audit trail that comes with that as well. It is called the email delivery log. We're not going to see any results in here because it's a demo environment. I can't send stuff out, but on this log, it doesn't only tell you if the email left your system, it tells you if it was delivered into the client's inbox. It will also tell you if they opened the email or opened the attachment. So you get a very strong audit trail on the send of your documents out of your system. And to make this work, we do set up some DKIM and DMARC settings because most email security will stop a system from sending out emails with your domain at the end of it. So that just allows that to happen. So a really nice module there as well. So before I open up the floor for questions, I just want to say one little thing to everyone. I don't want anyone to leave here today saying, oh, I saw all of Sage Intacct today, and what I saw looks really, really good. I hope what you've seen looks good. I really do. It is a fantastic solution. But we have seen a fraction of what Intacct is capable of doing. The modules that I did talk about, cash management, purchasing, global consolidations, and so on, I talked about them very quickly and very briefly. Even in the modules that I talked about, there is very much added functionality that we could spend time on. I could spend an hour and a half on the purchasing module alone. There's that much functionality in it, like the ability to create additional posting transactions in transaction currency, turn on match tolerances, set up price schedules and vendor price lists and fixed vendor discounts. A vast amount of other functionality we could turn on in the modules that I did talk about. So you really just gloss the surface of the modules that I talked about. Outside of the modules that I talked about, there are modules that we don't even get to demo because an hour is just such a brief amount of time to demo Intacct. So some modules that I didn't talk about that are available, a full-blown revenue recognition module where you can set up your RevRec templates. When you enter in an invoice, you say that this is going to go into deferred revenue. It's going to get recognized throughout this time frame, whether it happens straight line, daily, so on, whether you want it prorated, and the system will actually automatically do that for you, recognize your revenue based off the parameters that you set. There is a full fixed asset management module where we can do depreciation schedules, disposals, as you add an AP bill. So if I code an AP bill to a fixed asset GL account, it automatically creates the asset for me in this module. There's an inventory control module where we can handle fluctuating forecasts, inventory replenishment, inventory cycles, inventory totals. You can organize your inventory into warehouses, aisles, rows, bins, zones. As long as you're not doing any manufacturing, a very strong inventory module. There's an employee expense module where your employees can enter their expenses into the system. There is a budgeting module that comes out of the box to actuals versus budget. There is a projects module where you can do project costing and billing or just project tracking. There's an employee time module where employees can log their time to projects and mark that time as billable or non-billable. There is a prepaid expense amortization module. There is a contract management module where we can handle termed contracts, evergreen contracts, multi-element arrangements, tiered pricing, usage pricing, all of the above. It is fully compliant with all revenue recognition standards. So just a notes of some other modules that we barely get to talk about. If any of that resonates with you, or you want to see more in terms of the modules that I did show today, all you have to do is let us know, and we would be more than happy to do a more customized demo and dive into some of those modules in much more depth for you. And with that, thank you for coming out today. It's been a pleasure. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Bye now.
Thanks, everyone.